Hi everyone. Well, you've been waiting for me to do this little video on water spirits. I'm by no means an expert on water spirits. I've had quite a lot of experience though. But the people that know about the water spirits are like the ministers from Ghana and Nigeria and places like that. But I think God's just bringing some things to the surface now so that we know how to pray. A lot of things have been hidden from us, really. I've talked to well-known prophets and speakers, and I say to them, "Why don't you talk about water spirits?" And they tell me, "Well, we do actually, but no one hears us." So I think there's been like a blindness there. Anyway, God's uncovering it. Isn't that good? So anyway, water spirits. Yeah, you have to remember two-thirds of the world is water, and a lot of spirits dwell in the water. Now, there's actually a lot of scriptures that talk about water and water spirits, and I'm going to grab some papers and just read you a few. So, excuse me, I have to put my glasses on to do this. And then I'll tell you some stories. In Revelation, it says the serpent spewed water from his mouth like a river. It says in Job that he God churned up Rahab, and the seas were all churned up because Rahab actually was a water spirit. The dead are in deep anguish. And it's talking about Rahab again, in the waters, that all those that live there, and there's lots of spirits in the waters. Leviathan in Job was also in the midst of the seas. You can read that. It says in Isaiah 2, God broke the head of Leviathan in order to divide the sea. And in Matthew, and Jesus cast the demons into the pigs. Where did they go? To the sea, because that's where they came from. Isaiah 27 talks about Leviathan again, the twisted serpent. He slays the reptiles that are in the sea. Psalm 89 talks about the raging of the sea. You've broken Rahab in pieces, the one who is slain. You've scattered your enemies. You rule in the raging of the sea. In Ezekiel, it says, "Thus says the Lord, because your heart is lifted up and you say, I am a God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas." There's some very powerful water spirits in the seas. Pharaoh actually in Ezekiel 29 got his power from the sea. It says, you have to go, it's down here somewhere. It says that Pharaoh went down to the water every day, do you remember, and got his power from the sea. And God rebuked Pharaoh and the source of his power, which was in the sea. Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh of Egypt and prophesy against him. I am against you, Pharaoh of Egypt, great monster who lies in the midst of his rivers, who has said, my river is mine own. So a lot of people that operate in water spirits do get their power actually from water spirits. You'll not make a carved image of any likeness of anything in heaven or that's in the earth or that is in the sea. That's in Deuteronomy. And then, I told you the pigs, the unclean spirits went back to the sea. That's where they came from. And again, in Job 41, God's talking about Leviathan. You can't put a jaw in his hook, a hook in his jaw. He will make a covenant with you. Will you take him for a servant? And it goes on talking about Leviathan, and it says, he makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot, because he leaves a shining wake behind him. And that's all talking about Leviathan, who's in the sea. There's a lot of scriptures, actually. I'm not going to go through them all, but I will have them written out. You can, if you go to my website, you can get, go to the store, and when you go to the store, go to other authors, and you'll find some ebooks. You'll find an interesting one called The Witch Doctor and the Man, and it's Dr. Bishop Kenko's testimony. I believe he's from Ghana, and he was a fourth generation high witch doctor. He was actually trained, before he was saved, of course, he was trained for 11 years under the ocean. So it's a very interesting testimony if you download that and read it. The Witch Doctor, excuse me, The Witch Doctor and the Man. My website in the store, other authors. There's also one by Pat Holiday called Ocean Spirits or Sea Spirits. And there's a free one on the internet by a man called Debo Daniel. It's a free book about water spirits. That's good too. So, well, you know, I came across lots of water spirits when I've been praying for people. Now that since ever I became aware of them, you know, about 5 or 6 years ago, cast out a lot of water spirits. They're very good at pretending at Christian things. I've noticed something though, that when there's strong witchcraft and sea spirit, water spirit control, they usually hooks a lot of people, you know, in a way that sounds very religious and not even religious. It sounds very kind of like super spiritual, and you know, it will say things like, "Will you give up this for me? Will you give up that for me?" And it kind of can lure you down the garden path that way. Will you give up your job for me? Will you give up your house for me? Will you give up your town for me? And it gradually lures you out into a place where you're kind of like on your own and really takes you out of your calling. Will do that. I came across a lot of spirits, ministries a couple of years ago. God always sends me, does things in a row with me, usually 4. I went to 4 churches in a row where there was a water spirit impersonating their angel. And the first one I was shocked. I saw this figure. At first I thought, oh, it must be the angel over their church. Then I realized it doesn't have any glory. So I thought, that's not the angel. So anyway, we rebuked it. It was a water spirit trying to give them direction, actually, to a place where there was a lot of water spirits. So when we rebuked it and it left, I saw their angel. Their angel came back. And the first water spirit actually looked like their angel. And they can make themselves look like the angels. But, you know, you always have to watch for the glory and the grace of God, don't you? I prayed for people. I prayed for a girl. Oh, excuse me, that's the phone. I prayed for a lot of people that something always happens when I make these videos, the clock or the phone or the dog or something. Anyway, I prayed for a girl. She actually got saved in my meeting, and she got filled with the Holy Spirit in the next meeting, and she kind of immediately got into the spirit realm very quickly. And she was a Baptist, and usually Baptists have, you know, that fundamentalist background like I had. Usually have a little struggle to really get in the spirit realm, but she did very easy, and she started to get delivered from a lot of witchcraft, because actually her mother was a witch, and she got delivered, some strong deliverance, but she wasn't all the way delivered, because when I was praying for her, I was also with a group of other people, and you know, I had to spend time with them too. So I said, well, come another meeting, and I'll finish praying for you, but I can't take the whole day with you, because it wasn't fair to these other ladies. Anyway, she was a really sweet girl, and so she came up to my conference in New England, and she made this announcement that she's going to an orphanage in Africa somewhere. So, you know, I'm like, what? I said, I wouldn't go to Africa until you're all the way delivered, you know, and you're a little bit grounded, because there can be some strange things that you're not familiar with in Africa. No, I believe I'm supposed to go. I believe I'm supposed to go. So I said to her, well, would you just let me pray with you after the meeting? She said, okay. Well, my friend was there. That was a missionary. Her name is Bunty, actually. And there was her, the girl, and her pastor's wife. So after the meeting, we went to my hotel room, just prayed. I just felt uncomfortable, so I just waited on the Lord. And the Lord told me, that's a water spirit that's trying to take her back to Africa. I can't remember which country it was. I said, and the Lord told me, the water spirit came from the orphanage that she's going to. So I said to her, what exactly are you going to do in Africa? So she said, we're going to an orphanage. So I said, well, do you know the people? She said, no, her pastor's wife met them on the internet, something like that. I said, well, I believe that it's a water spirit in you that's trying to go back to the place it came from in Africa, and it's just using you to get there. When I said that, she kind of turned to stone. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone do that. It kind of went to stone, and we cast this spirit out of her. It left, and then she just kind of sat looking at me, and she said, I don't want to go to Africa. I said, she said, what was all that about? So I said, well, it's a water spirit, and you see, you have to remember this. Christians forget this. Most spirits cannot move through the air. They are earthbound. So that's why they depend on a person to attach themselves to, an ornament, jewelry. They have to attach themselves to something in order to travel. I've seen demons on a plane hitching a ride. And so they have to travel like you and I do. Only the very, very high ones can move through the air. So you have to remember that. So you see, it was just it wanted to go back to where it came from, because water spirits like to travel. And they like to travel. They'll attach themselves to people even, and things. People that go on mission trips to Africa, they attach themselves to something, because people buy things that have been prayed over. They buy things in the market and stuff, and water spirits attach themselves, and that way they can go on a little trip. So, but then they want to go back again, so they look for a way to get back. So this was trying to get my friend to go to this place. Maybe I'll remember in a minute which country it was. And so anyway, when it went, she didn't want to go anymore. And so I said, well, I don't know where that would have come from. I mean, she's a little Baptist girl. She said, I know exactly where it came from. She said, when I was a kid, I bought this huge doll. My mother bought me this huge doll. She said, I just loved it, in a garage sale. She said it was big. It was the ugliest doll. She said it really was the ugliest doll you ever saw in your life. But this doll never left my side. It never left my side. Wherever I went, the doll went. She said it was really ugly. She said it went to bed with me. Wherever I went, it came with me. She said, like some kids have a blankie, she had this doll. But anyway, even her mother, who was a witch, a high witch, hated the doll. So that must tell you something. So the mother burnt the doll in the middle of the night. Well, guess what? The spirit that was in the doll then got into this doll. You see, because now it wants to go back to the orphanage that it came from. And she's going to use her to take it. Anyway, so she didn't go, thank God for that. And we cast that spirit out. Now, I've come across water spirits that the water spirits are very, very crafty, and they can do things that are so kind of like spiritual sounding. They're spiritual sounding. That's why you really have to discern. You can't just go by something you hear or even see. Actually, you have to discern. I love signs and wonders, by the way. So but they can produce a few things as well. You have to watch and see if the glory of God is there. I've seen people in worship get kind of lost in the spirit. They're lost, but I can't see the glory of God on them. So I said, what are they lost in? Because they're not. When you're lost in the Lord, you can see the glory of the Lord on that person, right? Agreed? Water spirits, yeah, I told you they were, I've seen them impersonating angels over different ministries. A few years ago, well, a couple of years ago actually, I did a trip and 4 places in a row. We took out major gateway water spirits. They control the coasts. They control a lot of the coastal areas, most of the coastal areas. You go down like around Sarasota area, homosexual spirit. All homosexual spirits, they're water spirits, controlled by water spirits. Lust, fornication, adultery, pornography are all come from the water. They're all water spirits. But when I was in New Zealand, this is an interesting story. When I was in New Zealand, I have an angel that he stays with me when I'm in New Zealand, and he's from Ahopi. He's a beautiful angel, and he came to my house a couple of years ago, and he told me, come back to Ahopi. So I knew, well, there must be something there, for me to do. And then the pastor, a friend of mine, The next day he emailed me and said, can you come and do a meeting? So I said, yes, right away. Some things you don't have to pray about. So I was there, and while we were there at a Hope, I was with a good friend of mine, Margaret, from New Zealand. Some of you know her, Margaret Knight, and the pastor and his intercessor. We went down to the ocean, and on the ocean, the Lord told me this is a gateway into New Zealand, and the gateway's blocked. And I saw, by the beach, Margaret and I saw exactly the same thing. We saw this shining, shimmering kind of figure. And it was I knew it wasn't the Lord, but it was still shining, and it spoke to me. The spirit was a water spirit, and it was guarding the gateway, one of the gateways into New Zealand. And it said to me, I am the ancient. And I said, you're not the ancient one. And it said to me, the spirit said, I've been here since before New Zealand was New Zealand. So it was like claiming territory. So I told it, to go. The pastor, it's his territory, he told it to go, and it did actually leave. And I have a picture of the light that came on to that place from heaven when that thing left. And then an angel came from the beach also. The angel that we saw had been in a battle. He walked to the car. Margaret and I both saw him. He got bigger and bigger as he came to the car, whoa. And he said, I came to call the Christians in New Zealand to pray against the Muslim spirit. So you see, there was a water spirit, like a Nazi spirit, over Sydney Harbour at that time. And 4 places I went to in a row, there was a water spirit blocking the gateway. So they block gateways and entrances. I just squeezed this one in too. My friend from New Zealand, she tell you this herself. Margaret Knight, you can email me and I'll give you her email. But Margaret and her husband Russell, they were missionaries for I think 2 or 3 years in another African country, and I can't for the life of me today think of these countries. Malawi, I think it was Malawi, and so they worked out there for a while. They came home, and this was years ago, I guess. I don't know how many years, maybe 8 or 9. But anyway, Margaret and Russell now, they were over with me and David helping us, staying with us. And Margaret and I, we went and did some meetings in Reno. And we had a great time. But on Sunday night after the meeting, there were no restaurants open. The only restaurant that was open was in the casino. So we went to the casino restaurant with the pastor. Now that restaurant, the casino there, is the whole theme of it is Neptune and mermaids and water spirits. So we walked past, we didn't take much notice. We went and had a meal. We, paid for the meal, came back, and then the next morning, Margaret and I are on a plane leaving out of Reno. And as the plane starts to pull away from the gates, Margaret suddenly says, I feel really ill. And she's like bent over. I put my hand on her back. I started praying in tongues. The flight attendant was saying, is she okay? Should we stop the plane? And I said, no, I didn't know what was happening, but I said, no, it's fine. She'll be okay. Are you sure? Yes. So I just kept praying in tongues. And so after a little while, suddenly, Margaret sat up again. She was fine, but she was absolutely soaked. Her top, her jeans were absolutely soaked. They weren't damp. They were soaked. And because she had to wait till we got to Atlanta then to be able to change clothes. But what happened was, when the plane started to leave the gate, in Malawi, Margaret somehow had been somewhere. Sometimes you don't realize where you go. Sometimes you go places that have been prayed over and there's like demons there. Like in Hawaii, this water spirit tried to pull my friend under the water. You see, they want to pull you under the water. So anyway, what happened was when the plane started to leave, that water spirit that she picked up in Malawi wanted to go back to join its buddies in the casino, because that's where all the water spirits were. So when the plane was pulling away, it left, and Margaret was free from the thing, and I guess it went back to the fountains and everything in the casino. And then my friend Eric there, he did a whole, I'll give you his email if you want. I'll send you what he wrote about it. Him and some other pastors did a whole thing there in Reno with the rivers there, the main river there, and bound up the water spirits that were interfering with everything in the city. So, if you live near rivers, honestly, do what Bob Jones used to say. Go to the rivers, bind the water spirits, put oil and salt in the water, bind the water spirits. I can tell you tremendous testimonies where people have done that and the atmosphere of the town has changed, the businesses have prospered, the church has prospered, because these things do really interfere. Maybe I'll make another little video because, I don't want to make these too long. They're very sneaky water spirits, but they are around. You should pray over the coasts. You should, if you live near the coast, pray over the coast. You should pray over the rivers. Water spirits are very deceptive. Very deceptive. A lot of people have water spirits and don't even know. Now, like I said, you can go on my website, get The Witch Doctor and the Man. That's Bishop Ken Coe's testimony. And there's another one called Sea Spirits. Don't just find anything on the internet though, okay? Because some of them are written by magicians and stuff. When you learn to take authority over these things, I tell people. This is what I tell people. The enemy has a strategy. He's not, stupid. The devil's not stupid. He's been around a long time and he studied human nature for a long time. So he doesn't just do things haphazard. He has a strategy. And he tries to figure out what makes you tick, what your weakness is. So, you know what though? This is a wonderful thing. You can, by the Spirit of God, discern the enemy's strategies. I go places, God shows me how that church got in that mess. What happened? Oh, there was a strategy, and God shows me the strategy, and we undo it. And then and God gives you a strategy to undo that strategy of the enemy. Understand? So you have to keep your antenna up. Listen. Don't pray, discern. You have to learn to discern the strategies of the enemy and undo them. So I want to encourage you to get this. The trouble is doing these videos, which I love to do, but then you don't buy my CDs. And the CDs are my cows, so I can go and do some other stuff, go to some places where they can't play my playing there. So I have 3 CDs called Spiritual Strategies. And it's about the different strategies of the enemy and how to discern them. Religious spirits have a strategy to take out a church, to bring in control, to do this, that, and the other. The Merlin spirit came into a lot of worship, especially on the East Coast, about 10 years ago, and got into the worship and everything. And it was a water spirit, Morgan Le Fay. So it's all on there. It will help you learn to discern strategies. You must do that. And I have 3 CDs on the seer anointing. A lot of people have that and don't realize it. The seer anointing is a prophetic gift, but the Lord moves on your senses: taste, touch, feel, smell. I can feel everything, smell everything. And so that's what that's all about and how to operate in that gift. And then Joanne's book is good when you get delivered, because you have to learn. This is on our website under other authors. It's called Living the Supernatural Lifestyle. And it's really knowing what's yours. You're, as a son of God or a child of God, daughter of God,